Hi everyone, it's your daily 10-minute business and finance news wrap for this Thursday, the 3rd of June 2021. Later, the Australian share market hit another record high, is 8,000 for the S&P ASX 200 within its reach this year. But first, to what is being touted as the new GameStop. AMC Entertainment is the biggest cinema chain in the world, but COVID has seen it struggle. Still, it didn't stop small rebel investors inspired by Reddit discussions to pile in, to stick it to professional Wall Street investors. Shares almost doubled overnight in the US, and the company extending its recent gains to more than 3,000% so far this year. The company says investors will receive free popcorn and exclusive movie screenings. But what are the warnings? I spoke earlier with Evan Lucas from InvestSMART. What's your message to investors piling into stocks like AMC Entertainment in the US? Shares have gone up 3,000% so far this year, doubled overnight. They're inspired by all this Reddit chatter, giving the finger to Wall Street, pushing prices up. What do you say to them? What's the warning here? What's the message?
Yeah, well, they've already had the warning, and GameStop is the warning in terms of let's have a look. We've already seen something very similar like this happen at the start of the year with GameStop. It's an amazing thing, and it also comes back to another part. It's outside of your question, which is regulation. How do you actually have normal market mechanisms when clearly a stock like AMC is a mid-cap stock in the US, under normal conditions without the Reddit input, trade in it per day would be quite low. Like, you wouldn't be seeing the kind of turnover that goes through. But if all of a sudden you get a group of people collectively doing the same thing in a very, what we would normally refer to as an illiquid stock, it overwhelms. And if you all of a sudden have everybody doing the same thing and betting the same way, away you go. But going back to GameStop, we had the same thing. Everybody was betting the one way, and then all of a sudden you started to see people that had been from the start come out. And all of a sudden as people came out, it came out just as fast. So yes, you can have the finger to Wall Street all you want, but if you actually look at what AMC is technically worth, according to everybody in Wall Street, it's $5, not $63 where it currently sits. And that's the risk, is that this is not done because of value or because there's a genuine reason inside AMC to be worth $63. It's because a group of people are and have found a way to expose the manipulations of a market. And that's what's here. This is the question also about regulation, is that how does somebody like the SEC, which is the US's regulatory body, control social media? I mean, outside of markets, the control of social media is very, very hard. We know it has issues with bullying. It has issues with all sorts of things. Now we've got an issue where it's actually creating regulatory risk and speculation risk by a group of people working together.
So inevitably, will the price just crash?
Don't know about crash, but inevitably people will come out. And by crash, yes, you could see very, very quickly a 10% decline. I mean, again, look at trends in this sort of world you're asking. Social media bubbles is what probably we're going to call it. Crypto is another example. Have a look at what happened 2 to 3 weeks ago with the start of the slide in Bitcoin. Have a look, as I said, as GameStop in terms of the same thing. If you go back in history and you have a look at the .com bubble, social media and all that kind of stuff didn't exist, but you had the same scenario where you had this euphoric buying, blindly buying in for no apparent reason for companies that were just had a .com at the end of them. Very, very quickly, it came out when all of a sudden you realized it wasn't worth what it is. So this isn't a new phenomenon. It's just been done on a different forum.
And we hear more about this sort of thing happening in the US. Are there any examples here in Australia?
In terms of what's happened here, not to the same level. Not to the same level. There's certainly been stocks in the past that have been driven up by speculation. And I don't want to point them out to you in terms of what they are, but it has happened here, but not where a social media chain or a chat forum chain has done it. But in terms of having a look at companies that have had, an incredible listing and have exploded. I think the best example, top of my head, would be OneTel back in the day. And look what happened to how OneTel finished. We were talking about executives going to jail. There was fraud, but on the open, it exploded. There are many, many examples like that are probably, again, it's just a different forum. It is, over speculation, over hype. It then's become a reality that it's not as good into whatever it is. I mean, some would even argue what's going on with Nutex right now is possibly another way. It's just not the same forum. But again, you've had all of this speculation about what this company can do, and then you actually find out that it's not doing what it's telling you and it's fallen. It's a different scenario, but so that has happened in Australia, just different ways to how we're asking the question.
Evan Lucas there from InvestSMART, and it comes on the day where the share market here in Australia rose to another record high. The S&P ASX 200 up 0.6% to 7,260. Energy stocks did best. The banks rose, and for more, here is Evan once again. We did reach another record high today, so now we're looking to the next big milestone, 8,000. Is that within reach for the 200?
So what is it, 700 points away from where we currently sit, give or take, in terms of what's going on. Is it reachable? Look, you never say never. The question realistically is what gets us to 8,000 points. And why I say that is, don't forget, when we talk about the index, we talk about the market, it's the collection of the top 200 companies on the ASX 200. So the All Ordinaries is the collection of all of the companies that we have. So let's look at a CBA as an example. CBA makes up 9% of the ASX 200. CBA is already at record highs. So to get that extra 700 points, CBA is going to have to keep making record all-time highs. BHP and Rio are also going to have to do that lifting because their percentage equation inside the ASX 200 is quite large. And realistically, it's the top 15 companies in this country, which basically start making up about 65 to 70% of the ASX 200 by weighting. They're going to have to actually find that real movement higher. So by all means, it could happen. And as I said, there is no doubt that monetary and fiscal policy is driving this up. But if you realistically break down company by company, and again, let's go back to CBA as the example, they're doing incredibly well. But if you look at loan growth from last month, you've seen that it hasn't actually been that strong. Yes, the housing market's exploding, but actually the amount of houses on sale at the moment are falling. So therefore, the amount of new loans that are coming onto market are getting smaller. And they're in a competition with an incredible amount of competition we've never seen. So when you look at an individual stock like CBA and then you feed that into the ASX, to get to 8,000 points by December, as some people are forecasting, would be very, very hard. Something really dramatic would have to keep going and drive us those 700 points. Not saying it can't happen, but a lot has to go right to help that. And a lot of value that is probably already there in the market also has to be found to keep going that next level, if you understand what I mean by those whole points.
Moving on to retail sales, those numbers out, up more than 1% for the month. What does it say about the sector, and can that stellar growth that the sector saw in 2020 continue?
So in answer to that question, yes, it can. And a reason I also point back to what I've just spoken about is if you look at what's going on in our savings rates. So the data that came out earlier this week around our savings showed that since February 2020, the Australian household has saved an extra, on top of what we normally save, an extra $212 billion. We are not normally a group that does that. We are not normally net savers. And so there's a lot of money that is still going into the household. But we did see from April to May that that's starting to come down. That savings rate is slowing down, which means we've got more confidence and are starting to spend, which is what we saw in the April numbers. So
that's Evan Lucas there from InvestSMART. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Business Ricardo.
This On The Money stream is provided for informational purposes only. The content in this stream should not be understood as constituting advice or a recommendation. It's not personal advice and it doesn't consider your personal circumstances or objectives. You should contact a licensed professional before making any financial decision.